Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi, and welcome to the ISO Show. Well, hopefully you've listened to the previous two episodes when I was talking about how the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are actually aligned with a number of different ISO standards. If you haven't, I'd strongly recommend that you go back and you listen to those, because then this episode will make a lot more sense. Okay, so you may not be aware of the fact that the ISO standards do actually play a really big part in that journey towards a better future for all, not just for your business, but for the planet as well. So many of the commonly used ISO standards already meet certain goals. And so that was what the previous two episodes were all about. So I did explain in the first episode what the 17 goals are, and then I was talking about how those standards are linked to certain ISO standards. And I did mention it in the previous episodes, but you can actually go into the ISO.org website, and if you put in information on the standards that you may be certified to, you can actually see which SDG goals are aligned to that particular ISO standard. So I did provide a few examples of that in the last episode. So in this episode, I'm literally just going to talk about how your management system could be aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. Because you might be thinking, well, it's quite a big topic. We're looking at 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and they are quite varied. And you may be thinking, well, if I haven't got ISO 14001, an environmental standard, how am I going to meet those requirements? Well, actually, you'd be surprised. There are an awful lot of standards that are aligned with those 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So I would definitely recommend having a look at, which standards you've currently got, which standards you would be interested in potentially implementing, and obviously, before you do that, it's worthwhile going back and listening to some of the other podcasts that we've recorded. So we've recorded podcasts on anti-bribery and corruption, which is one of the areas that are aligned with the SDG, health and safety, occupational health, mental health safety, ISO 45003. So you might want to get some ideas on how you can enhance your current management system. And it doesn't mean to say that you have to invest in certification. I mean, yes, obviously that would be the cherry on the cake, and it could definitely help in terms of raising your credibility and, your company's profile if you're getting certification. But actually, you could just adopt one of the ISO standards to really complement and take your management system to the next level. Okay, so one example of that could be the Sustainable Procurement Standard or the Social Responsibility Standard. And again, we've covered these in previous episodes. But I think what I'd like to stress is that it doesn't really matter which standard you've got. You can start to align the SDG goals right now. And it's actually really easy. And you might be thinking, well, where do we even begin? So what I'm going to do, and this is just a short and sweet episode, I'm literally just going to give you 5 areas that you can start to consider the Sustainable Development Goals and making them an integral part of your management system by initially just making a declaration about your commitment, making a pledge to support the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, so for many of our listeners, this could just be the starting point for them. And as I'm going through this, you'll probably be thinking, there are other clauses within the standards, there are other areas within my management system that I know will support the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm just going to go through 5 tips. Okay, so these are 5 areas that are common across all ISO standards. So I'm going to keep it super simple, just literally to get you started on this. But if you would like any additional support on aligning the Sustainable Development Goals with your management system, or even introducing some of those management systems, we can do that at Blackmores. And so, more than welcome to get in contact with us, and we'll provide a free consultation. Or there are heaps of content available over in the ISOlogy Hub, okay, which is our membership portal that gives you access to tons of information on standards, quick tips, coffee break training, e-learning, and roadmaps to implementation, in particular ISO 14001. Well, I'm going to stop waffling on about that now and actually get into the 5 tips. So, number 1 would be leadership. So, is your leadership team already talking about sustainable development goals? Have you already made a commitment publicly about ESG? What have you actually declared that you're going to do? Because that, in theory, whatever that commitment is, should be aligned with your management system already. Okay, but if it's not, let's start the conversation. So, in terms of how you can reference this in your management system, obviously leadership need to be involved in making these decisions, making a commitment, and that could be a 1-year commitment, a 10-year, 20-year commitment. So a lot of organisations are making pledges now up to 2025 and 2030 at least. How can you reference that? Well, it could be included within a policy statement within your business. So if you've got environmental management systems, it could be a sustainability policy statement. So you can make reference to your commitment there. And also you could do that on your website and in other areas. In fact, I've noticed on some signatures with some directors, you've actually got the sustainable development goals that they're supporting in the email signature. Okay, so yeah, first and foremost, leadership commitment. And obviously that's a key requirement across all the ISO standards. And that's going to be essential to driving forward any change, any new initiatives that you're looking to introduce as part of your management system, as part of your business's way of working. That then ties in quite nicely with the second one, which is management review. So have a little think about how you'd like to raise this subject at your next management review. Potentially gather information on what your competitors are doing. What do you think that you're already doing as an organisation to support the 17 Sustainable Development Goals? And what initiatives you think your company could introduce over the next few years? And that could be, those opportunities for integrating other standards. And again, not necessarily certification, but it could be that you're just making sure that you are cherry picking aspects of best practice from international standards. So yeah, you can do that in your preparation for management review. Obviously, you can discuss it. You could bring in other people to speak about the subject at your management review. Okay, so if you'd like a representative from Blackmores to do that, to help with that conversation, we can certainly do that. But importantly, you want to try and get some kind of commitment in the actions, so in your minutes, so that you know that you've got some clear actions moving forward that leadership have agreed to. The third area is the context of the organisation. So typically, when we're implementing an ISO standard, we would facilitate a SWOT and a PESTLE. So SWOT is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And PESTLE is looking at your external influencing factors, okay, like political, economical, social, environmental, ethical, technological and legal. So obviously these areas do cut across the Sustainable Development Goals in numerous ways. In fact, I could probably do a podcast on that alone. But yet, in terms of SWOT, the O's for opportunity, this is a huge opportunity. So for organisations that aren't taking the SDG seriously, they could be losing out on prospective clients or losing existing clients because they're not demonstrating their commitment. So, yeah, it's an opportunity. It could also be a threat. But in terms of PESTLE, again, looking at external influencing factors, why wouldn't you do this? What's the impact, in terms of the external influencing factors on your organisation? This covers numerous different areas. Let's just look at one area. If we're looking at legal, looking at bribery and corruption, why not have a policy in place for that? And that can help to support one of the Sustainable Development Goals. So yeah, there is so much opportunity to leverage your commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals through context of the organisation if you're doing that in the right way. The fourth area would be objectives. So once you've discussed it with management review, you've gone through your SWOT and your PESTLE, you've identified your opportunities, threats, risks, then why not put them into your objectives? If you are serious about this, if your company has made a public declaration, it'd be great if you could have some clear key performance indicators to actually make it happen. And this will include, obviously being smart about those objectives. So it does need to be specific. And you might just pick one of those 17 sustainable development goals. It doesn't really matter. But the main thing is that you've got accountability, you've got a timeline there, and you've got resources available in order to be able to make it happen, and you can monitor and measure your results. So objectives is one way of basically setting your stall out and saying, this is what we're going to be doing. And it could be over the next year or the next couple of years. But it's one of those, drawing the line in the sand and saying, this is where we're at now, but this is where we want to be. And then finally, last but not least, the final tip, number 5, is operational controls. So if you are setting some objectives, and let's say it's about carbon, okay? You've set an objective to be carbon neutral by X date. So you've got that objective in place, you've got KPIs, but you will need some controls to make it happen. Now, we have recorded previous episodes. I can't really mention carbon standards without mentioning carbonology. So that's our 7-step approach to being carbon neutral. So that's including the alignment with ISO 14064 on carbon footprint verification and PAS 2060 on carbon neutrality. So one of those areas that we would include within that is a carbon reduction plan. And the carbon reduction plan can help to identify your operational controls while managing your carbon footprint. So that could be to do with sustainable procurement, sustainable travel, and then obviously monitoring and measurement controls. I mean, they're just a couple of areas. There are numerous areas. It could be looking at, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, looking at your fleet. So operational controls are going to be key to actually making it happen. And then you can obviously report back to, the leadership team on your progress and success. And all of that obviously would be in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. So, as I said, this is a very short and sweet episode, just to highlight how simple and easy it could be to make a start on aligning your management system, your company's commitment and pledge to these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So I hope that's been helpful. The links to things like the ISology Hub and Blackmores will be available in the show notes. And as always, we're always here to provide any assistance and support where needed. Thanks very much for listening, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.